Hi, I'm Brad Burrow, and this is Grant Gooding with Proof Positioning. It's the Thinking Bigger Business show here. Thanks for joining us. Grant's team is a foundational partner for us, and you'll see their content on the website and on the print magazines. And today is the first video where we get to introduce Proof to our network. So, Grant, thanks for being with us, and tell us a little bit about what you do. Give us the elevator speech about what you do.
Oh, no pressure.
You've never done that before.
Yeah,
have you?
well, we're a market research company,
Okay.
and we hyper specialize in this one very specific area, which is emotion. And it's a sort of a new and emerging area of market research, but it will be the future, and it's very exciting stuff we get to work on.
So emotional data.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
We had to call it something. Emotional data, in many ways, if you think about it, it's the exact opposite of big data. So every organization, regardless of their size and scope, they have data. They have customer data. They have purchase history, right? If you think about a coffee shop, for instance, a coffee shop has a lot of big data that it operates with. Number of coffees sold, number of lattes, number of muffins. So you can use that information to be very, very good at operating a coffee shop. And you can even use that data to be predictive. So, hey, we know that it's cloudy today and it's a Tuesday, so the afternoon has a high probability of being
Good selling afternoon.
yeah, good selling, or the opposite, right? Like we can send people home, or we need to make sure that we have twice as many, muffins ready.
Right.
And all that information is very, very helpful to operate a business. The challenging thing with using that data, if you're a leader, is what does that data mean exactly? And so the way we think about it is big data is who, what, when, where, and how. If you think about your analytics account on your website, for instance, you can see to some extent who's coming on, what they're doing, when they were there, how they got there, all those things. So here's a really tricky fundamental question. Why are they there? Why did they come to your website? Why did they go from this page to this page? Mm-hmm. Why did someone walk into the door of your coffee shop? There's any number of reasons. So how do you figure that out? And the answer is you can't. It's not tricky or challenging, it's impossible. You can't figure out why people do things based on what they can do. All you can do is hypothesize. So what emotional data is it is a way to get a data source around why those things happen. And typically, you get to those why things through interviews, focus groups, and surveys and things like that, which is great. We should be doing these things, but being able to correlate them to behavior is extremely tricky. And they kind of operate in different worlds. So part of what we try to do is bring a data source, which we call emotional data, which essentially is metadata that exists in people's actions. And we're going to get into the nerdiness of that. But there are certain things that we can take advantage of. So there are basic neuroscience principles and behavioral economic principles that we sort of hijacked and utilize in our market research method, which is timing, for instance, right? So the brain operates at different speeds when it's making decisions. So there's like the logic brain, which is the frontal lobe here. That's the part of our brain that does like math and some people do calculus. I don't do calculus.
That doesn't happen here.
and complex decision making and things like that. That part of our brain, the smart brain, that part of our brain physiologically really doesn't participate in any of the decisions that we make. It does to some extent, but it's very, very little. Most of the decisions we make exist in the limbic system of our brain, which is the emotive brain. And that part of the brain operates extremely quickly. So one of the things that we do, for instance, is we measure in milliseconds how fast people react to certain stimuli and questions and ideas and things like that. And so that's one metric that we use to identify whether or not we've hit a raw emotional chord, which if you're trying to sell something or convince someone to do something, the more emotion that you use, would say positive emotion or negative emotion, it kind of depends, but the more emotion that you use, the greater the probability that you can manipulate or change someone's behavior. So it's really a way to kind of hack through a lot of the tricky parts of business and leadership decisions. Should we do this? Should we do that? Why are people doing this? Why are they not doing this? And we can provide insights and data in this area where, for the most part, virtually every organization is blind.
So we do the same thing in video production, where I know that if we can create a piece, especially like for a nonprofit that's trying to raise money or something, if we can hit an emotional chord with the audience, the viewer, they're more likely to give or get involved. It's the same thing, right?
You're responsible for filling the room up with tears when they watch the video.
I've actually had people say, "Can we make people cry at this thing?"
Yeah, that's best case scenario, right?
Yeah. So you're taking that concept but applying it to a brand or a product, saying that if we can connect emotionally with our potential buyer, then our likelihood of getting a sale is higher.
Yeah. So if we work with a nonprofit, for instance, and no one's ever said to us, "Can you make people cry?" But in indirect ways, sort of, right? What we're trying to figure out is what can we say that is going to create the highest mathematical emotion, and that's what we're there to figure out. And we, in many ways, would give that data over to you and say, "Hey, just make a video about this."
Yeah.
And or however that creatively manifests itself. And that's best case scenario. Now, if you're talking about a distribution company or a small manufacturing company, the assumption is that, well, there's no emotion that exists in there. Completely wrong. As a matter of fact, many times we see there's higher emotion that exists in B2B businesses. It sounds bizarre, but the reason is because we think about, like, if you're a vendor and you make a product and that goes into the assembly of another business, they're part of your supply chain. So the fact that you're doing well makes sure that their product is doing well. So are you emotive about the success of your own business and your product? Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So just because how you would think about emotion around happiness, sadness, or those major emotions, they do exist in B2B environments as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's translate that over to small businesses. So a lot of people that are kind of involved in our network are solopreneurs, or they're very small. They've gotten into a small business because it's something they loved, or they did the work and they're growing, and now they need to transition to other things. Maybe now I've got to become an accountant, or I've got to find an accountant, I've got to find an HR person, they've got to learn all these different aspects. This is one of them. What would you say to a small business owner on how they could use some of the concepts that you're talking about to help grow their business?
Well, first thing they need to make sure that they understand is if they're not taking into consideration the emotions of their customers, they're losing money. Because in many ways, they don't matter, right? Only the customer matters. And most small businesses have a hard time transcending that idea. It's their own emotion, right? It's their baby. It's either a product or a service, and they need to abstract and kind of look at a 30,000-foot view and say, okay, why do people buy this? Why do people hire us? And objectively try to figure those things out. A lot of times, just an exercise like that is very helpful.
How can you do that? So obviously we could engage with proof and take that to a whole different level. But somebody that's maybe just starting out that wants to try to learn some of these, how do you do that? How do you step back, take a 30,000-foot look at your business and say, all emotion out of it from the owner's standpoint, what do I need to do a better job of connecting with my customers?
So a V1.1, I would say, is make sure and you go talk to your customers. Ask them open-ended questions and don't slow them down, correct them, or stop them. Just let them talk. Now, that's extremely helpful, but you have to keep in mind that they're going to tell you in many ways what you want to hear because of social norms. And they don't want to offend you, and your mere presence is wildly biasing the conversation.
Right.
So it certainly has its flaws. So we always say, if you want to go talk to people, use it, but create it or use that as a hypothesis building activity. Ask them why they're doing business. Now, when they, for the most part, what they're going to say is they're going to first objectively go, okay, I'm talking to Brad. I know what's important to Brad. Therefore, I'm going to try and say what I think Brad wants to hear because I know what's important to Brad. And they're not going to tell you something that could potentially be offensive.
Brad's not very good at this. No,
Well,
but I'm
no,
not gonna say
not even that. Like, I don't know how to operate a camera myself. That might be a very significant emotional factor in your decision making. But you're like, are you kidding me? You know, sophisticated and how amazing our equipment is and our people and our engineers and our technology, and that's it. So a lot of times the actual reason that people do things are not what we want to hear. They are wildly simplistic, and the reality is what it is. And it's not that it's good or bad, but we need to understand that, because if that's the case, so let's say that we find out that it's, I don't know how to operate a real camera, or I don't want to spend the money on it. You can use that information in your marketing and advertising in order to make sure you're generating the proper emotions. Make sure you're not overselling them, right, or talking over them, and you're communicating them meeting them where they are, as it were.
So would you say that's the number one issue that small businesses have when it comes to understanding what you do, is they just don't even know where?
They don't know. And it's not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's inherently challenging information to ascertain. It's not like they're not trying, but small business, you have all these moving things, and you are building a baby in many ways, and it is in the eye of the creator, and challenging that a lot of times is not. It's not that they're not open to it many ways. It's their belief system that exists in their head is very hard to change. And so it's a very challenging thing to get past. I don't know if that's a good answer.
Yeah, that's good. So how would somebody connect with Proof? I mean, and do you work with small businesses? I mean, I'm sure you work with all kinds of businesses, but what would be a really good target?
Yeah,
for you guys?
when we were building this business model, one of the things that we found was only big organizations, for the most part, use research. And I would say, based on our experience, those are probably the organizations that need it the least. Now, they use it because they're more sophisticated, and because they are trying to minimize waste, maximize return on investment. But these are all things that are important to small businesses as well. So we actually built our company in scale so that we can work with small organizations. And so we actually focus on small to mid-sized organizations, because they need research. Most of them are trying to get over a very complicated hump, right? Do we build a new product? Well, that could be a paralyzing idea, because that might take all of your capital and human resource capital to build something new. What if it doesn't work? If it doesn't work, it could sink the company.
Yeah, right.
So it makes sense for them to come to somebody like us and say, hey, this is what we want to build. Are people going to buy this? Well, we can tell them, typically under no uncertain terms, people are going to buy this, and this is who they are. This is what they look like. This is the industry that they're in. And this is what you need to say to them to mathematically increase the probability of them buying. So in many ways, we're minimizing their risk of growing. And that's a pretty dangerous tool if you can use it. And that's what we are. We're just kind of a...
That's great. Come out of the blocks a lot faster too, right? Instead of taking years to build something, maybe build it in months.
And confidence, just having the confidence that it's going to work or it's not going to work is the difference between, a lot of times years. Organizations will sit on ideas for years because it's too expensive to actually execute and figure out whether or not it's going to work.
Yeah. So one more question. What are we looking at for the future of Proof? What are some of the things? Can you talk about some things that are coming down the pike, or kind of where you're headed? Obviously, we come out of the pandemic, and that's changed things for a lot of companies. It's changed the direction of our company in some ways. Anything new you can talk about with Proof?
Yeah,
without having to kill me.
No. It's a fun. So our system is being patented, and
that's great. That's awesome.
It's a whole thing, yeah. We have figured out that when we're measuring emotion, you can use that for lots of things. And so what we intend to do is build very specific products in unique verticals and that's what we've been.
So when you
focusing
say
on for the
product, you
future.
mean like a service or something you could offer to,
Right.
You can try the alpha or whatever it is.
That's right. So there, we've identified one starting point for a product that we're building now, and it's in a very specific vertical, and it solves a very, very specific problem. We believe in inch wide, mile deep, and we'll go execute that, and hopefully the business model works, and it'll either operate or we'll sell it and continue to get better at our core business.
Yeah.
So really, Proof is in many ways just kind of like a hub and spoke model or a flywheel that throws off new ideas that allows us to execute in different areas.
Yeah. Well, we are very excited to have you as part of our team, a foundational partner and the Thinking Bigger team. Really excited about the content that you have coming out, because I know as a small business owner, we've been in business 24 years, and this kind of information has never been attainable for a company like ours. So that learning and the things that we can learn from your articles is going to be awesome. So no pressure there.
Yeah, thanks. Well, you keep doing what you're doing because we need you in the city. So thank you for what you do, Brad.
We appreciate it. So Grant Gooding with Proof Positioning. We look forward to a lot more content coming, and thank you for watching, and share this video. Get it out there. There's a lot of small businesses that could really use some direction in this area. So we look forward to connecting with you a lot more. Thanks a lot.